Okay, today we're going to be looking at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. So let's look at our big ideas first. We'll identify the origins, characteristics, and consequences of industrialization. 2, compare and contrast the industrialization of Russia, Japan, and Britain. I already said we're going to be looking at Britain today. And 3, describe the environmental impacts of industrialization and urbanization. So let's get started. We kind of talked about this last time, but I'm going to revisit it, and that was the agricultural revolution. What happens is farming practices change. Last time we talked about the seed drill invented by Jethro Tull. You kind of see a later version of that here. And what this means is more food is going to become available. And as I said last time, this also puts many farmers out of their jobs and their homes. And this is going to be the 2 reasons we see a population boom, because the increase in food and the farmers are going to begin migrating into the cities. So we see these cities start to grow. And what this produces is a ready supply of laborers, people who are going to be working the coal mines, building the factories, and then running the machines in the factories. But why Great Britain? Why was Great Britain the place where the Industrial Revolution starts? Part of it is natural resources. A big part of that is rivers and ports. Rivers supply water to factories. Many of the early machines are powered by water. So you'll see a lot of these factories being placed along rivers. Along with that, it allows for the creation of canals. And canals are important because they're going to basically be dug to connect major rivers to each other and provide more trade routes, which allow manufacturers to bring their goods to markets. Along with that, Britain has numerous seaports, which is going to allow them to increase their shipping outside of the country. And all of this is really made possible because of the vast amounts of coal that Britain has and iron. The coal is going to begin powering the steamships once those are built, and also the iron is what's going to be mainly used to build all of these new machines. But there's more factors than that. One of the major ones is demand and capital. As the population of Britain goes up, there's a higher demand for products. More people, they want more products. And producers are ready to meet this. They want to produce more. They want to make more money. But they need something. They need something else in order to produce more goods. And that's money. The British economy had prospered, had become very prosperous. People had made a lot of money due to a growing overseas empire. And this really started with the slave trade back in the 1600s. But what had happened is that the business class, the business owners of the British society, had accumulated what we call capital. And all capital is money that they're going to use to invest in new businesses. So they had built up their savings, and they're going to use the savings to invest in new businesses, whether it's them starting the business directly or making loans to people to start businesses. And this is all able to be done because of a strong economy. Britain has a very strong economy, and in part that is because of a stable government. Britain, unlike the rest of Europe, had no tolls when it came to shipping and traveling at this time that were put on by the government, I should say. No shipping barriers, and they also had a very strong navy, strongest in the world, to protect its overseas empire and the overseas trade shipping routes. So let's look at the first industry that advances in Britain, and that's the textile industry, which is actually Britain's largest industry. And like I said, it's the first to really experience change from the Industrial Revolution. For many years, British merchants, the guys running the textile industry, had used what is known as the putting out system or the cottage industry. Mainly because it was called the putting out system because they would literally put out the materials to peasants to basically take raw cotton and spin it into thread and weave it into cloth at home. And the cottage industry name comes from the fact that this was usually done in a peasant's cottage. And it's a very slow process, and so manufacturers are always looking for a way to speed up this process to make more cloth, to sell more cloth. And so what this is going to lead to are new inventions. The first, John Kay's flying shuttle, which you see here, it allows people to thread and weave cloth in a much quicker time. Then you have Richard Arkwright's water frame, which is a water-powered weaver. And then finally, James Hargrave's spinning jenny, pictured here. All of these slowly, I shouldn't say slowly, but advance the process of creating textiles, making cloth. The one thing that they run into, though, is the supply of cotton that they need. And that's going to be taken care of in America by a guy by the name of Eli Whitney, whose cotton gin allows America to provide more cotton in a quicker amount of time to the British and their textile industry. Factories are born. The new machines that are being created pretty much eliminates the cottage industry, eliminates the peasant farmer, the peasants working in their home making cloth. The new machines are just too big and expensive. So manufacturers are going to build these very long sheds to house these machines, and they're usually near rivers because, like I said, many of the early machines use water power. So spinners and weavers are going to come in every day, and they are going to work to produce large amounts of goods. And one machine was now producing usually what an entire small district of workers once did. So you can kind of imagine the amount of work or production coming out of one machine. And then finally, we talked a little bit about this last time, but I'm going to mention it again, the transportation revolution. Because of all these new goods that manufacturers are producing, they need a quicker way to get those goods out so they can sell them. Some build turnpikes, which are private roads. They build turnpikes so they can ship their goods right on them, and anybody else who is going to use them is going to be charged a toll or a fee to use them. Others, like I mentioned earlier, dug canals to connect rivers to each other. And engineers are going to begin dabbling in building stronger bridges over these rivers and also updating Britain's harbors to create better overseas trade. Now, finally, one of the biggest, probably, and most important is the invention of the steam locomotive. This is going to kind of lend itself to the growth of railroads, and it all started in the early 1800s when a guy by the name of George Stephenson develops the steam-powered locomotive that pulls carriages along iron rails. And why this was important is because for the first time, people had a way to ship goods overland. For the most part, they'd been relying on, well, where does the river go? We have to follow the river and maybe dig a canal here. Now they could create a railroad wherever they wanted from point A to point B. And the first major rail line opens in England in 1830 and connects the industrial towns of Manchester and Liverpool. And so the development of the rail line is not only going to help Britain, but also Europe and North America increase its industrial production. So before we go today, let's look at the big ideas. Identify the origins, characteristics, and consequences of industrialization. Compare and contrast the industrialization of Russia, Japan, and today we talked about Britain. And describe the environmental impacts of industrialization and urbanization.